Good Tuesday afternoon to everyone, and welcome into Apex News Above the Noise. I am Kyle Thompson.
And I'm Craig Blanton.
Craig, we have got a loaded show, and we're opening with breaking news right here in the Commonwealth out of London in Laurel County, where a circuit judge has ruled today that sitting Mayor Randall Weddle does not
Who
meet
we've
the
talked about a lot.
does not meet the residency requirement to appear on the November ballot. We're going to give you the full picture of what that means. And we're going to go to Washington, where Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego, you called it a couple of months ago. You said that he was going to be in trouble. His spending donor money on St. Barts and Disney trips and his mother-in-law's babysitting bill, all sorts of crazy stuff. We're going to talk about that as well. All while he was eyeing a 2028 presidential run. Then we're going to move to the Middle East, where Iran just publicly contradicted two of Vice President Vance's biggest claims from the Switzerland talks. Then the Supreme Court has handed down a unanimous decision on a Michigan family that lost a $200,000 home over a $2,000 tax bill. I know you're going to have plenty to say about that one, Craig. Two justices called it wrong, but we'll see what happens. And we close tonight right here in the Commonwealth with a financial reckoning reshaping college basketball and athletics. Louisville today has announced there was going to be a $30 million deficit. We'll get into all of that. But before we get into tonight's show, if you are new here, welcome to Apex News Above the Noise. We do this so that you have somewhere to go for real news without all the spin. If this show has ever given you something to think about, or if you like it tonight, we ask you to do one thing right now. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure you share and like it, and click that notification bell so that you can always be notified when we're about to go live. Share it with at least one person so that we can at least show up in their algorithm as well. It costs you nothing, and it helps us grow this community, so we will go ahead and thank you there. But let's go ahead and start with the craziest news out of the Commonwealth of Kentucky today. We're opening tonight with breaking news right here in the Commonwealth out of London in Laurel County. Laurel County Circuit Judge Michael Caperton issued a ruling today removing London Mayor Randall Weddle from the November 2026 mayoral ballot, finding that Weddle does not meet the one-year residency requirements under Kentucky law to run for re-election. The case came down to a simple but serious question. Does Randall Weddle actually live in the city of London, or does he live in Keavy, a community outside the city limits, after a two-day hearing on
Right.
May 12th and 13th? And after personally visiting both properties himself, Judge Caperton concluded the answer was Keavy, and the court found that while Weddle owns a home on East 5th Street in London, neighbors, law enforcement officers, utility employees, and records all pointed to a larger property in Keavy as the family's actual residence. The judge noted that the London property lacked basic signs of full-time living. As of this evening, the Laurel County Clerk's Office told WKYT they had not yet received the formal order, but the ruling stands. Randall Weddle will not appear on the November ballot for London Mayor. Craig, Mayor Weddle has seen better days, if you will. He's had a lot going on over the last year and a half.
Yeah. Don't forget the Bashir money bundling.
Yeah, he has Bashir money bundling in there as well. But we had he was removed from office, then he was allowed back in office, and then you had the allegations of Bashir money bundling, and now you have this. You have a judge actually going out to his house and taking a look to see if he actually lives there.
Let me ask you this, being Laurel again. How often do district judges go visit it's not a crime scene because it's a fake living situation, which we've had rumors about that here in Franklin County even. But
Yeah,
how often does a district judge leave the office to go inspect two different residences to determine himself what's going on?
yeah, never. I mean, and this
This is that serious.
it's even more surprising. You could see a district judge where things are a little bit lighter, but a circuit judge going out and doing this, no, that it would never. I can't imagine Judge Wingate, Judge Shepard going and visiting a property on a civil matter like this.
Yeah, so this is a pretty serious deal, I guess, and maybe if the Bashir bundling money too, if that's federal or not, I don't know. Do you know if it's federal?
It was caught by the states because it was under the state
Okay.
finance.
This guy must just be corrupt as the day's long, and the judge is probably tired of dealing with it. And I know we're tired of reading about it and reporting on it, but maybe things will calm down in the city of London now.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this is that Weddle swore under oath in 2023 that his address was the Keavy home, and he used it at least 6 properties.
Right?
Yeah, his own American Express records from March of this year list Keavy. His defense was essentially, I was afraid to live in London because of everything that had been happening. That's a lot of paper pointing in one direction. I don't.
Now let me ask this question:
Sure.
If, because I've watched too much Law and Order and stuff, police give you protection, they allow you to move to another place because you're allegedly getting death threats.
Yeah.
How long do you stay away if you're an elected official?
Well,
and you're still getting those death threats?
Yeah, you can't. I mean, there's no precedent for that would allow someone to say live in Lexington and be a Frankfurt resident.
Yeah.
I mean, the law is the law. You have to be domiciled there. You have to have a primary residence. So
and he wasn't even close.
Wasn't even close. We'll obviously keep an eye on this, but for folks here in the Commonwealth who have been following this is late breaking news that came across right before we went on the air.
And it's not over yet. It's not over.
I have no doubt.
Got other charges. He's got other charges.
He does, and this will be appealed. I can guarantee this will be appealed.
Yeah.
So, moving on to our first big story of the night, Arizona Democratic Senator Ruben Gallego is facing serious political heat tonight after a bombshell investigation published Sunday by Politico, based on a review of Federal Election Commission records and a source familiar with the senator's spending, revealed that Gallego has repeatedly used campaign donor funds and his leadership PAC, known as Juntos PAC, to bankroll luxury travel and personal expenses for himself, his wife, and his children. According to the records, Gallego tapped those donor accounts for family trips to Miami and Chicago, Disneyland, Disney World, and St. Bart's, and also used a joint fundraising committee he operated with then Congressman Eric Swalwell to attend the 2023 Super Bowl in Arizona. The records show more than $18,000 in child care reimbursement since 2019, including a $400 payment to his wife's mother for babysitting during a campaign fundraiser, as well as payments to a full-time au pair company. His wife, Sydney, his 3 children, his mother-in-law, and the au pair were all described in the report as frequent travel companions on the donor's dime. Craig, a sitting U.S. senator and not one that is new to bad stuff going on and a lot of questions.
He's been in Congress 10 years.
Yes, right? And he was best buddies with Eric Swalwell, as we said, senator using his leadership PAC to take his wife, mother-in-law, au pair, and 3 kids to Disneyland and St. Bart's, and paying his mother-in-law a bunch of money to babysit his kids. What's your reaction to this, especially the scope of what Politico found?
Yeah. First, Juntos PAC. Juntos is Spanish for together. So it's the together PAC. Why he's using the Spanish word for an American PAC, who knows? But, it's apparently legal. According to Senate rules, it's apparently legal for these leadership PACs. It's got to be a leadership PAC.
Right.
And then you can take your family all over the country, let the corporate donors, which 50% of the Juntos PAC money comes from corporate donors. So they're giving all this money. He's taking his kids, his mother, all over the darn world, free of charge, getting, they're probably flying first class tunes and staying in some luxurious islands and stuff. And so this is since it's legal, from what I've read today, since it's legal, this is a scandal waiting to happen because, as he says in the article, they all do it.
Right. Well, and that's the interesting thing.
Transparency in this, and will Politico start looking at everybody?
I think they should. Gallego, that's the crazy thing about this. Gallego did not dispute the numbers.
Right. He said, we all do it.
Yeah. His response was essentially, everyone does this. It's not breaking news. He said in a statement, with the rising cost of this is the real slap in the face.
Oh, 100%.
Anyone watching this right now, this is what you need to understand. This is what they think of you all right now. With the rising cost of childcare and the burden it has on the budgets of American families, Democrats and Republicans in Congress and the White House alike regularly travel with their wives and children, as is permitted by the FEC. And he is technically correct. The federal law gives lawmakers significant latitude, but that's what he's saying to you. He's saying times are tough. Times are tough for a guy who makes $200,000 a year as a senator, and plus all the other perks, plus all the living expenses, plus all the per diem that he gets. times are tough. My family has to travel with me to St.
Well,
Barts.
you hit it too. He gets per diem.
Absolutely, he does.
He gets travel expenses paid for, so he's using those PAC money to pay for the family to go on these supposed one. They'll probably do a 1-hour political meeting.
Yeah.
Then they got 23 hours to play on the beach.
If not more, they go for a full week, and they're not going to these big junkets to Frankfort, Kentucky. They're going to St. Bart's and St. Kitts and places like that.
Right.
He is technically correct. Campaign committee funds can be used for travel, food, events, and childcare as long as they are not considered personal use, meaning activities that would exist regardless of the campaign. And leadership PACs operate under even broader rules with almost no personal use restrictions at all, as long as some fundraising function could be claimed. But the source inside Gallego's circle was far less charitable than the legal fine print. Quote, he just spends his campaign account like it's his personal slush fund, the source told Politico. That's pretty damning, if you will.
And that's from inside his insider circle.
One of his inside people. He's using campaign cash to live a luxury lifestyle, and members of Gallego's own inner circle have reportedly raised concerns about the spending, especially given that Gallego is openly testing the waters for a 2028 run. He's not even mentioned in anything where vetting scrutiny will be on an entirely different level. The defense is essentially, and let me technically get this right, it's legal. Everybody does it. What's the big deal? And that may be true under FEC rules, but Gallego has built his entire brand around being the champion of working class Americans, the guy who tweets about how ordinary people can't afford a Super Bowl ticket, and then he takes his campaign funds to go to the Super Bowl.
He bought $37,000 worth of tickets.
Got to be kidding me.
To take his corporate buddies who paid for it through their PAC. And then he says it was a political fundraiser. How much money did they raise at the Super Bowl, Kyle?
I don't know.
Zero. And then as soon as the Super Bowl was over, they got rid of that particular PAC.
They did.
But, you know, when you write the rules, I wrote this down. When you write the rules and you vote on what you do is legal or not, it's a recipe for corruption. 100%. I'm just going to say their leadership PAC can basically do anything. It should really piss off every American voter in the country that sees what's going on. They are smacking us in the face by letting corporate people fly them around the world on those, what they call them, Codels, and other junkets.
Yeah.
And then the corporate people pay for the parents, kids, grandma, grandpa, and they just do that out of the goodness of their heart.
Absolutely.
They don't expect nothing in return, don't you think, Kyle?
No, not at all. Not at all.
I mean,
but that's the thing is that it's offensive to me that he would use the idea that, well, times are tough. Times aren't tough for you, bub. And
no, not $175,000 a year.
And it's a joke to sit here and say, well, I mean, my people gave me this money because they want me to be able to go out and represent the people or get more money or do what you want me to do in Washington. That ain't happening at Disneyland, fool. What are you talking about?
And it ain't happening at St. Bart's or anywhere else. It sure doesn't happen at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, let me get into a little bit more of why it's a little more complicated.
Okay.
When you look at who Gallego was traveling with and at whose expense the St. Bart's trip paid for by the Juntos PAC was for the birthday celebration of Sidney Gallegos' boss at a Texas-based healthcare consulting firm. That boss, Carlos Ziffarini, is a registered lobbyist and a direct campaign to Gallego. So the senator's wife works for a man who donates to the senator's campaign, and when that man throws a birthday party in St. Bart's, the senator's PAC picks up the tab for Sidney's return flight. The Super Bowl,
of course, he don't expect nothing in return.
Oh, right,
he's just a great guy.
No, he does. He just wanted to do that out of the kindness of his heart. Super Bowl entanglement is no less eyebrow raising. Gallego and that guy, Eric Swalwell, who has since resigned from Congress amid multiple allegations of sexual misconduct, ran a joint fundraising committee called the Swayego, combination of their names, Victory Fund, that spent $34,700 on those Super Bowl tickets that you talk about. That committee raised no money after March 2023 and was quietly shut down 18 months later. They think you're stupid. They think we are all stupid. Gallego has said he had no knowledge of Swalwell's alleged behavior. Yeah, right. But the association has become increasingly difficult for him to outrun as Swalwell's scandal continues to expand. Craig, a PAC paying for a birthday trip to St. Bart's for your wife's boss, who also happens to be a major campaign donor, a joint Super Bowl committee with none other than Eric Swalwell that spent over $35,000 on tickets and raised zero in contributions. At what point does technically legal stop being a sufficient answer anymore for these guys?
Well, technically legal is still legal, right?
Yeah, technically legal
Okay.
is still legal.
So, but what it depends on is the voting public. If you keep voting the same people, I have to see who said that, Angela. Okay, you keep voting in the same people in office again and again. What do you expect them to do? Whether it's on the local level, all the way up to the U.S. Senate, what do you expect them to do if they're in there 4, 5, 6, 8 terms, or 20 terms if you're in the House?
Well, as you've always said, we do have term limits.
Yeah.
Every 2,
we
4,
have
6
term
years.
limits 2, 4, and 6 years. Oh, shit.
There's Craig's phone again.
Yeah, I forgot to turn it down. But it doesn't matter if it's local or national. If they write the rules, they can do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
And they're just, because nobody cares anymore, they're just slapping us in the face with it and making it so obvious.
And they could care less what the average American person thinks. They don't care. They don't care that things are hard for the average American person.
What's the incumbency re-election rates over 95%?
And they know that.
Yeah, sure they do. You darn straight they do.
Yeah.
And so they can do whatever the crap they want and get away with it. And I mean, let's go huge and talk about the Epstein scandal. Who's been arrested in that?
Not a person.
Nobody. Not a single damn person is spending any time in jail other than Epstein's woman. That's it.
Well, here's why the story has a very, very long runway. Gallego is actively positioning himself as a 2028 presidential candidate. And prior to Swalwell getting out, his name was being mentioned. He traveled to South Carolina on Friday for the Democrat Party's On the Road series. I don't think Willie Nelson will be there, but the standard early state testing the waters move. He's hired former Biden White House Deputy Secretary Andrew Bates specifically to handle crisis communications. That ought to tell you something right there. A move that generated criticism even from the Democratic political veterans who noted that bringing on a crisis communication expert tends to signal you have a crisis. Gallego also established a legal defense fund last month. Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna down in the Tampa Bay area has already called for a formal ethics investigation. You talk about somebody that isn't afraid to stand up to somebody. And the source inside Gallego's circle told Politico there is a genuine concern among his own aides that he would fail the rigorous vetting required by anybody on a national ticket. Presidential level scrutiny is categorically different from Senate level scrutiny. Spending decisions that drew little notice during a Senate campaign can become a defining national story. But at this point, you've hired a crisis communication person. You have a legal defense fund. You have a potential ethics investigation going on, and his own aides are worried about it. I don't think this is just about the presidential election anymore. It sounds like he might be in real trouble, not only to just stay in Congress, but if they decide to run somebody against him, this is going to be damaging for his future.
Well, we talked about this before when it came out that him and Swalwell came into Congress together. They developed a best friend relationship. And at the time before Swalwell resigned, Gallego said they're best friends.
Yeah.
So if they're best friends and one guy's doing this, the other one darn sure knows about it. We don't know if he allegedly participated in it or not.
Well, he didn't know. He didn't know anything, Craig. He didn't know anything.
How do you do that when you're best friends and everybody, whether it's male or female, has got to tell their friend some information about their life or anything. It just comes up in general conversation.
Yeah.
And they can deny it all they want because they're going to get smoked either way. But Swalwell went down and flipped over my iPad. Swalwell went down. Will Gallego go down? I mean, Politico's opened the door, which shocks me that Politico even did it because they're a left-winger too. But
I will also
I applaud them for doing it.
Yeah, I will say that while what you said is correct, Gallego may legally be okay from a formal, criminal perspective.
Right.
FEC rules are genuinely permissive in a lot of ways. This is a senator who has built his entire brand around being the voice of working class communities, and he's now defending a luxury lifestyle funded by donor money. I mean, these are people, these are grandmothers and grandfathers and working class people who are given $5, $10, $15, $20, $100 because they think he's doing genuine work for him, and he's taking that money and he's going to Disneyland. Literally.
He's going on vacations. Those people can't afford to go on because their whole donation might be $5.
Right.
Because we all get the text messages, donate $1, donate $3.
Right.
And then what do? They just turn right back around and go to St. Bart's, go to Disneyland, go to Super Bowl, and slap it in your face because you and I ain't going to get tickets to the Super Bowl. We don't know the right people.
No.
So apparently we need to run for federal office, and then we can get to go everywhere free of charge. We just ain't playing the game right, Kyle.
Playing the game right. I mean, we're not.
I mean, this is beyond. I don't even understand.
We understand it's not theft, and we also understand that one of the arguments is probably going to be, well, everybody does it. Doesn't make it right. Not everybody should be doing it. If people are taking these donations and they're living a lavish lifestyle, then they should be held accountable every 2, 4, and 6 years, as you've said.
Yeah. Well, will the people in Minnesota use that and say, well, all my whole community is stealing from the federal government for Medicare, so that makes it okay?
I think there will be a reckoning at some point. I don't know if it's going to be in these midterms, but I think there will be.
It came a lot. This story came a lot quicker than what we thought.
You're right.
Because where we started talking about this, we wondered out loud if they were going to ever look at Gallego just through his simple association with Swalwell. Politico did, and they probably started to gather all this information. It took a month, or it took 6 weeks before them to publish because they had to check everything.
Before we move on to the next story, we'll say, hey, Angela, how are you doing? Thank you guys for joining us. Thanks for coming up, and you need to come up and
Somerset.
Come and get that pizza from up at Da Vinci.
Yeah. Is Roney Park still in Somerset? Because I played softball there 2 times a year for about 15 years. I love going to Somerset.
Dinosaurs roamed the earth?
Yeah, way back 30 years ago. But yeah. So Roney Park, is it still there?
We just walked through a story about a senator who may have spent donor money like it was his own personal expense account. Now we're going to go to the Middle East, where the gap between what the vice president of the United States announced in Switzerland, what Iran says is actually agreed to, is becoming one of the most consequential diplomatic contradictions of this administration. If you watched Monday's show, if anybody was watching Monday's show, we covered the Switzerland talks in detail. Vice President Vance spending 36 hours at Bergenstock Resort, producing a 60-day roadmap with Iranian negotiators, calling it a productive session and declaring significant progress. But today, Iran fired back at 2 of Vance's most significant claims, and the gap between what the United States says was agreed to and what Iran says is agreed to is now wide open. First, the nuclear inspections. We talked about this specifically yesterday about the IAEA. Vance said Monday on camera yesterday to reporters that Iran had agreed to invite IAEA nuclear inspectors back into the country, calling it a major milestone for the American people and the first step in permanently denuclearizing Iran. Today, Iran's foreign minister spokesman Ismaili Bakai held a press conference and said flatly, "We have not had a meeting with the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, nor do we have any plans for the agency to inspect Iran's nuclear facilities damaged by U.S. and Zionist military aggression." That is not a nuanced diplomatic pushback. That is a direct contradiction. And in fact, another statement that was made is that Iran says their missiles, whether nuclear or not, are not part of the U.S. deal and never will be in these negotiations. Craig, that sounds like 2 major points right there where it doesn't sound like the same people are on the same page.
Well, and it might be a moot point now because the U.S. has no way to enforce anything with the Senate and the House saying they don't want Trump to go to war anymore. It's even though it was a symbolic vote and won't become law, the Senate voted today with several Republican senators voting with the Democrats. McConnell and McCormick didn't vote because they didn't even bother to show up, and McConnell is out of the hospital. and I remember them taking people in on a stretcher to cast a vote.
Right.
Then Rand Paul, Lisa, the same ones, Rand Paul, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Bill already lost Cassidy, voted with the Democrats. So how the F do you negotiate a ceasefire with a crazy country like Iran when you have nothing to back it up with? And the House and Senate, you're negotiating with the bad guys, trying to get them to come into the world community. And then you got the House and the Senate putting handcuffs on you, and you're in the middle battling both of them. How can you win? Trump should have just ended this in the 60 days as he's allowed to do this. Should have just ended the whole, went at them 100 miles an hour, ended it in 60 days, and then let the chips fall after that where they may.
Well, I will also say before we go to the second part of this story that what we are seeing in real time is the Republicans and the White House potentially squandering any opportunity they had at saving the midterms.
Yeah. Iran's reading our papers. They're watching our news. They're not stupid. They see the sentiment of half the country. So they know, well, we'll just wait them out. Yeah. We'll say one thing in private, then we'll go public and just throw out the exact opposite. And what's the United States going to do? The United States can't do nothing now because we're so divided on this thing. People don't understand that Iran is just weeks away from making nuclear bombs.
They truly are. I mean, you were looking today that, within a week they could have 8 nuclear missiles.
I didn't want to step into where you're going to go into that later, but yeah, they can have it in said less than 7 days, but the administration and Europe and NATO have been saying Iran could have it in less than 2 weeks, which is correct. Yeah. But once you're at 60%, you've done the hard lifting. It's apparently, from what I've read, pretty easy to go from 60 to 90%, which is weapons grade. And they've already proved when they tried to bomb Diego Garcia on that 2,500-mile range of the missile, that will reach Norway, that will reach Great Britain, it will reach Finland. So they can hit any target in Europe, and they certainly can hit Israel. And it would take 3 nuclear bombs to just wipe Israel off the face of the earth.
Yeah. Well, the nuclear inspections that you were talking about and that contradiction was significant enough on its own, but Iran's chief negotiator, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who is also the speaker of Iran's parliament. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying here.
You're getting better.
Delivered a second statement that changes the entire framing of the deal. On his way home from Switzerland, Ghalibaf told Iranian state media the Strait of Hormuz will never return to its pre-war conditions and will be administered by the Islamic Republic of Iran in accordance with international law.
That's a pretty damning statement right there.
Let that land for a minute right there. The Strait of Hormuz is the most critical energy choke point on the planet for a majority of the countries, not the United States, but for a majority of the countries. Roughly 20%
China and Russia.
Yeah, roughly 20% of the world's oil and gas flowed through it before the war began. Under the 14-point memorandum of understanding signed on June 17th, the Islamabad MOU stated that Iran committed to toll-free transit for 60 days only. After that 60 days, the MOU explicitly states that future administration and maritime services will be determined by Iran along with Oman and other Persian Gulf states. Iranian officials have already signaled they may impose service fees, not tolls, service fees.
Yeah, just change the name.
Waterway. I mean, we're just using semantics at this point.
Yeah.
Which maritime law analysts call legally questionable on an international strait. Iran's position today is the strait is theirs. That was not how this deal was sold to the American public at this point. Craig, the MOU gives Iran toll-free transit for 60 days only, and then Iran determines what happens after that. Ghalibaf is now saying publicly, he sounds like a character out of Harry Potter, by the way, is now saying publicly the strait will never go back to pre-war conditions, and Iran will administer it permanently. The United States just lifted a naval blockade, one that took several days to end, and suspended oil sanctions in exchange for a 60-day window. And now Iran's chief negotiator is publicly claiming permanent administrative control of one of the world's most critical waterways. What leverage, if any, does the U.S. actually have after this blockade and these sanctions have been lifted?
You could go to none because of what Congress voted on today, what the House had already voted on and what the Senate voted on today. They have no taste for, and maybe Trump could spin this to an American first policy. Maybe he could say Congress wants to go America first, so I'm wiping my hands of that. We can make our own gasoline here in the United States. We just use Venezuela in the U.S. Both those together are the number one and number three, number one and number four producers of oil in the country. And then we got Canada north of us. We can take care of our country and just let everybody else deal with Iran on their own basis. And if they want to pay $2 million per ship in an administrative fee, and potentially Iran just shutting the strait down again because they want more money, or the wind changes direction, or a mosquito bit them or something, there's nothing we can do. England and NATO have already said they're not getting involved. Yeah. They only want to get there after we have wiped out Iran, basically all their military capabilities. So maybe Trump can spin it and say, fine, if that's what you want, Congress, we're out of here.
Yeah.
We're coming back to the United States, and we're going to go back to working on our hemisphere and making it safe for America.
The Don Roe doctrine, right?
The Don Roe doctrine, right? Yeah.
But go ahead.
But either way it goes, this is going to be political.
Oh,
no way. The Democrats laughed when the Republicans voted with them, because the Republicans could have stopped this. But Democrats vote in unison 100% of the time. You'll always see it's 212 Democrats, or it's 49 Democrat senators. They vote in unison. But we got 6 or 8 U.S. senators that shut down everything a Republican president wants to do. So Democrats will win. They'll use this in the general election coming up, and don't think they won't. And then
they're already using it in commercials.
Yeah, and then 3 seconds after they take control of the House, that'll be Trump's first impeachment of like 50 probably over the next 2 years, and America will grind to a halt
once again.
Yeah, right.
Here's the piece of this story that gets overlooked when we focus on the nuclear and diplomatic drama. On Monday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who we have both talked about on this show and we really liked, announced a 60-day sanction waiver on the purchase and sale of Iranian oil, a direct contradiction of the Islamabad MOU. The impact was immediate. U.S. crude prices dropped nearly 3% to around $74 per barrel. The first time oil has broken below $75 since March. International Brent crude fell 4%. Markets were pricing in a flood of Iranian oil returning to global markets. Before this war, Iran was exporting through a shadow fleet at steep discounts almost entirely to China because U.S. sanctions made legitimate sales impossible. Under this waiver, Iran could legally ramp exports back to roughly 2 million barrels a day, and sitting in floating storage right now are tens of millions of barrels ready to move the moment the legal pathway opens. But the MOU also promises a $300 billion reconstruction fund for Iran and the eventual termination of all U.S. sanctions. Iran's frozen overseas assets, estimated between $124 billion and $167 billion, could also be released. Iran, which entered this war with a weakened economy, may emerge from it with more financial leverage than it had before the strike was ever launched. At this point, Craig, and I'm going to go a little bit off of what you and I talked about before we prepared for this, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted, and then you kick in the idea that Iran may be more financially stable after all this is over, and the calls of what have we accomplished are simply going to get louder.
Yeah, and we can't argue against them because, when you said Iran was selling oil to China, they were going by rail and up to the Caspian Sea, then loading the ships there. Now, granted, it can't be as much because some of those super tankers, or whatever the term of the biggest ones they hold like 3 million barrels of oil. They can't get enough of that in by rail car, but China's buying that oil at a huge discount through the Caspian Sea, helping Iran. So they're having some money come in, but they're going to be better off. The $300 billion is not going to come from them. Well, who knows now? Who knows? But yesterday, not a red cent was going to come from American taxpayer monies.
Marco Rubio and the president both said that.
Yeah, and Iran has said they've got $1 to $1.2 trillion in damage. So $300 billion won't go a long way. But they've also said, Vance and Rubio, that the money that Iran has in the world banking system, that they would have to use that for rebuilding their country. And because we have a big say over the world banking system, we could make sure it's spent the correct way, not like when Obama sent it over there and that 1.7 billion was funneled right into their various terrorist organizations.
Pockets,
So,
right in their pockets.
yeah. So, can you say, did Iran come out better than this? I'd have to say yes.
It's starting to look like that day after day. I know our good friend Jeff, who watches the show, would also agree, and he's staunch conservative. But I think there are people on the right who are saying, "Listen, you you had a bunch of leverage. You had the will of the people to go do this. We were going to go help the people. Quit worrying about the dirty words of regime change. Just go do it. Just go save the people of Iran."
I mean,
And save everyone around the world, because you get the nuclear weapons away from these psychos. And it's not like we couldn't do it. It's not like we don't have the ability to do it. And I think that's the thing. The better part of defense is sometimes restraint, and that is not what happened here. We restrained ourselves right to the point that we weren't willing to do the things we needed to do, even if they were uncomfortable.
Yeah, we wanted the Iranian citizens to stand up to the Ayatollahs. Well, they did. IRGC killed 30 to 40,000 of them.
Yep.
But and we tried to send weapons in through the Kurds. Well, they kept them. So I don't know, because we had shut down most of their air defenses.
Yeah.
I don't know why we just didn't fly them in like you do food, just flying in cases and cases of rifles, and cases, hundreds or thousands of cases of rifles and weapons, and armed the citizens.
I don't know what.
I mean, I wish Trump had done. You've heard me say this a bunch of times. He had 60 days under presidential authority. He could have just relentlessly and turned Israel loose also, because Israel apparently knows where all these bad guys are, and just every day hit them all day long, 24 hours a day, and eventually wipe out the IRGC, because the IRGC now says, the administration, the Ayatollahs say they're in charge, but the IRGC is now saying through Al Jazeera and other news agencies that they're in charge of Iran now. They're running Iran. No longer the Ayatollahs or the former Ayatollah's gay son or whatever. And the president of Iran, he's about as got as much power as you and I do.
Right.
So who knows who's running it? But we know the IRGC is in control, and
we do know that
we had an opportunity and we blew it again.
Yeah, we do know that the president spoke before we went on the air today, but we were prepping and we didn't catch everything. We will report tomorrow based upon anything that was said related to this.
Pennsylvania, I didn't even listen to it.
We just covered a diplomatic agreement that Iran and the United States apparently interpret in two completely different ways. Now we're going to stay on the theme of accountability and bring it back home with a Supreme Court ruling, Craig, that I know is going to make your head pop off your body. Yeah. Handed down today, a Michigan family lost a 9-0 decision over what their attorneys call home equity theft. And two justices have even said what happened to them is wrong and likely unconstitutional, but they're not willing to step in at this point. The United States Supreme Court handed down a unanimous 9-0 decision today that is going to affect property owners all across this country, and not in the ways that we would want. And it starts with a family in Isabella County, Michigan, and a tax bill of just $2,241. The Pung
how much was the house worth?
Over $200,000. The Pung family owned a roughly, 3,000 square foot home appraised at nearly $194,000. Isabella County claimed they owed a disputed tax bill. Remember that, a disputed tax bill. The family says they never owed it. What is not disputed is what happened next. The county foreclosed on the home, sold it at public auction for just $76,000, less than 40% of the home's appraised value. The county kept the difference between what they sold it for and the tax debt. The Pung family lost more than $180,000 in home equity they had spent years building over a bill they say they never should have owed in the first place. Michael Pung, acting as personal representative of the estate, fought back. His argument was straightforward. The Fifth Amendment requires the government to pay just compensation when it takes property. and that makes fair market. Then that means fair market value in his eyes, not a lowball auction price. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, and today
Which Supreme Court, Michigan or U.S.?
Oh, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Oh my!
A family loses a nearly $200,000 home over a $2,000 tax bill. They disputed. The county sells it at auction for $76,000, pockets the equity, which is just disgusting.
Yeah.
And keeps the rest. Before we get to the legal ruling and what it means, just as a matter of basic fairness, Craig, you and I have talked about real property taxes and things of that nature. What's your gut reaction to what Isabella County did to this family?
This is exactly what we predicted. What it could happen, not would, but could happen. And, go back to my days in the sheriff's office when I learned about property taxes, when me and the chief deputy went to Louisville for a all-day class on this. And I learned after 1 year, if you don't pay your taxes, let's back up. You don't pay your taxes, they're sold on a courthouse step. Well, nowadays, one guy generally just comes in, or one company or one private equity firm just buys them all. And after 1 year, I thought it was 11 years, but after 1 year of you not paying your debt, they could take you to court.
Yeah.
And you could potentially lose your home. But after 11 years, it's a no-doubter because interest is like 18% per year, 1.5% a month. And so for
Mike Fitzpatrick.
God dang it. I thought I had the sucker turned off.
I'm going to turn it off for you every day.
I'm going to just turn the damn thing off completely.
Claude to turn your phone off.
Yeah, but I got it off. But the ring, I thought I had it turned all the way down. But anyway, for 1% of the home's value, they lost their home that they had owned. Who knows how many years? Even if it was just 5 years.
Well, and it was an estate. We're gonna hear about what happened, but it was an estate.
Okay.
It was probably just grandma's house.
And I've been advocating to eliminate, along with 7 or 8 other states, and Florida's moving really quickly on it, eliminate property tax. And now that doesn't mean don't pay the tax. That means take the tax away from your house.
Right.
Still collect the tax through some other mechanism, whatever it is. And I've said just take every damn tax we pay, put them in one bundle and divide them by 12 and collect them every month, just like you do a car payment or a house payment.
Yeah.
That way people aren't overburdened. But this is real world stuff. These people lost a $200,000, 3,000 square foot house is a big house.
It is. It is.
And they lost that home over 2,200 and what'd you say, 2241?
Yeah, 2241, and it was a disputed tax bill at that, which is also a fact issue.
Meaning they think they paid it, but they didn't, or it was
they think it was paid. They think it had been paid by the bank and escrow. So
yeah. So I mean, well, I dealt with that. All right, you said it was an escrow thing.
Yeah,
I dealt with that when Ted Collins was our sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
It was the second year we were in our house here, and I was paying escrow into the thing. Well, something happened, and several properties were not paid correctly by the sheriff's office. My house was paid. It was paid, but it was paid to a house in Shelby County. And the Shelby County PVA didn't pick up on it because it was a check from Franklin County. It had Franklin Craig Blanton on it. And it still went through. So I had to do a 3-way call with Sheriff Collins, the Shelby County PVA, and me to get this square, and a 4-way call, and the bank to get this thing squared away. It took about 2 weeks, but it was finally squared away. And I didn't know about it until Ted called, said, "Hey, I'm sending you a delinquent notice."
Well, it just goes to show this can happen to anybody, and it does happen to everybody. Writing for the unanimous court, Justice Samuel Alito ruled that under the Fifth Amendment's taking clause, the proper baseline for compensation in a tax foreclosure sale is the price obtained at the auction itself, not the home's hypothetical fair market value. The court said that requiring local governments to pay full fair market value would impose unprecedented burdens on local governments seeking to collect unpaid taxes and would make tax foreclosure sales impractical. Alito went further, offering a hypothetical to justify the outcome. Under the Pung standard, a tax sale to collect the $20,000 in delinquent taxes would actually net the government a $20,000 loss paid back to the delinquent taxpayer. The court called that result perverse. So the ruling essentially says if the county follows a fair auction process, whatever the auction produces is what the Constitution requires them to pay you. If your home is worth $200,000, but the auction only brings $76,000, the Constitution, according to 9 justices today, does not require them to make up the difference. However, and this is important to understand, The court did not close the door entirely on the Pung family. It vacated and remanded the case back to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, that's us, to consider a separate argument whether the procedure the county used to seize and sell the home was itself conducted fairly, and that question is still alive. Craig, the court's logic is essentially if we require fair market value every time, governments can't collect taxes, and that's a real concern. But
exactly what I was going to say. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I wrote hypothetical.
Right.
So they got a hypothetical value on the sale, but they tax us on a hypothetical value of our house. And you can go to the Pacific Palisades, for example. When people, old folks, bought a house for $70,000, it burns because of California negligence, and now it's going to cost them $3 million to build that same house back.
Yeah.
How, so does this open, in your lawyer mind, since you just read this, does this open up a fight against taxable property?
Well, I think it does, but I think it's going to make people start really thinking about how
hypothetical fair market value. We're taxed on it.
Well, but how legislators can fix this problem. It's now a problem that people are seeing. Here's the part of the ruling that every property rights advocate in America needs to pay close attention to, Craig. The decision was 9-0, but it was not 9-0 on the underlying morality of what Isabella County did. Justice Clarence Thomas and Neil Gorsuch wrote a separate concurring opinion and pulled no punches. Thomas wrote directly, quote, "What Isabella County did to the Pungs was wrong and, on my initial view, likely unconstitutional. Two sitting Supreme Court justices called what the county did wrong and likely unconstitutional and still had to vote the way the precedent required. The Pacific Legal Foundation, which represented the Pung estate, told Fox News Digital they were disappointed but energized. Their attorney said, it's satisfying that we get to continue fighting the case for another day. The Pungs have an opportunity to remedy the harms that were done to them, and they remanded a significant portion of that to the Sixth Circuit now, and they have to examine whether the procedure in Isabella County used was actually fair. If it wasn't, if the county cut corners or didn't follow proper process, then the Pungs may still have a path to remedy their money. Now, let me say this to you, Craig. From a practical standpoint, this is what a lot of lawyers, good lawyers that I know, what they do. If you're the attorneys for the county right now, you're trying to settle this, right? Like you're saying, okay, why don't we give you the difference?
Because they got national attention on this, right?
Here's $140,000, right? And you all use that to buy your new house or whatever else.
Screw that.
This. You don't want to go to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals because it sounds like there's a real opportunity here. And if it happens, there could be penalties and interests associated with that.
Well, what happens?
Losing more money than they got.
What happens if they hire a criminal or they do it themselves and the house mysteriously catches on fire and burns to the ground?
Don't give anybody idea there.
I mean, what are you going? What I would be so upset over this. This is just like taking your property and not, if they take it, fine, but if they don't compensate you for what its true market value is, because they tax us on its market value, you can't do one and not do the other in my non-legal mind.
I think the reality is that this county is probably going to have a whole bunch of new commissioners in there, and whether they had anything to do with it or not, we talked to our good friend, the PVA here, Will, who told us multiple times, hey, listen, people are mad at me. I didn't set the rules about reassessment. I didn't set the rules about taxation, but they're mad at me, and I don't blame them for saying that, but it could affect real elections for these places.
Well, is this just a one-off on this particular case, or is this Supreme Court precedent across the country?
Supreme Court precedent essentially saying that if there are processes in place and you follow those processes and you don't pay your taxes, they can take your house.
Well, so this is more of a reason to get property taxes off your damn house.
Yeah.
If you can lose a home, like I've been here, we've been here 31 or 32 years, long ago paid the house off. But I could lose this house over a $2,400 tax bill.
Yeah, 100%. And in fact, just to reiterate that, Isabella County was joined in the litigation by 10 other states and the District of Columbia, all of them arguing against a fair market value standard. That tells you everything you need to know about how widespread the practice is. Property tax foreclosure is legal in every single state. We know that. The mechanisms vary. Some states, have stronger homeowner protections than others. But the basic structure exists everywhere. Fail to pay a tax and you lose your property, potentially lose far more in equity. The Pacific Legal Foundation has been fighting these cases for years, and they have a name for it: home equity theft. Their argument's simple. The government's entitled to collect what it's owed. It's not entitled to a windfall at the homeowner's expense. Today's ruling does not settle that debate. What it does is send it back to the lower courts with 2 justices on record saying the practice as applied here was likely unconstitutional. The legal battle over home equity theft is not finished. It's just moving to a different court. But I think the bigger picture here, and I think something that you and I are saying here, there are 10 states in D.C. along with Isabella County and Michigan making these arguments. I can almost guarantee you, and I have not looked, but I can almost guarantee you who each of those states are. And they are the ones who are struggling, from an economic standpoint. It probably included Illinois. It probably included New York. It probably included California. All places that don't care about your personal and real property. Right. And that's the thing that we as citizens need to hold our legislators accountable for this.
Well, does Mondami and his leadership team say it's not right for people to own property? They want to go the communism route and the socialist route and all that stuff. I'm asking you this: if you're late one day, could they use their power to confiscate your house?
If that's
your brownstone in New York,
law, if that's
they can just change the law, right?
100%, 100%.
Because it's just like
it's not going to that. Do not think.
Yeah, it's just like it's like Gallego and Swalwell in Congress. Their leadership pack, they write the rules.
Right.
So what would happen? What would stop New York City, Hamtramck, Michigan, Minneapolis, St. Paul? What would stop their city commission saying, "Hey, we're changing rules in these cities. If you're one day late paying your property taxes, if you pay after 12/31 of that year, we're taking your house."
Yep, I totally agree.
And then we're going to share it with everybody.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how much we get for it. We'll keep the equity out of it.
So this is where Shannon Denniston, he didn't go, a House 74th candidate that was, his campaign was to end the property taxes like 7 other states, including Florida, are working on right now. And this was his campaign thing, but unfortunately he lost. But he's well versed on property taxes, and I'm going to send him this part of our story, tell him to watch it, and see how he responds, because
I think it's a real fight that's going to have to happen in the state of Kentucky as well.
It's going to, because today's a different world, and if you come and take somebody's home that's been paid for forever, just because they didn't pay a $2,200 tax bill, good Lord.
Well, and the crazy
it ain't America no more with that happening.
No, it's not. Well, we've been covering national stories all night: a Senate spending scandal, an unraveling peace deal, a Supreme Court property rights ruling. Let's close tonight right here in the Commonwealth, because a financial story breaking out of Louisville this week touches every single college sports fan, including those in the Big Blue Nation. So let's get right into it. You ready, Craig?
Yep.
All right.
Let's go.
Okay, let's go.
So we're going to close tonight's show right here in the Commonwealth because a story broke out of Louisville this week, just last night, that every college sports fan in Kentucky and across the country needs to understand. University of Louisville Athletic Director Josh Hired stood before the university's Board of Trustees and laid out a projected budget deficit for the coming fiscal year approaching $30 million.
Unbelievable.
Not hidden, not buried in accounting footnotes, presented transparently, give him credit for that, with the university's president, board chair, and chief financial officer all in the room. According to WDRB's reporting, Louisville's FY 2027 budget projects expenses that outpace revenue by nearly $30 million. In fact, $31 million in some places we've heard, a number that could be reduced by as much as $9 million, depending on different revenue opportunities, but remains staggering by any measure. This comes on the heels of a FY 2026 deficit that also hovered close to $30 million, which was patched together through, and this is crazy, a $10 million one-time transfer from the university's general fund, a new $200 per student athletic fee on the backs of the kids,
So let's go into each one of these points when you get done.
a $25 million line of credit from PNC Bank. University President Jerry Bradley made one thing clear to trustees, that general fund transfer is not happening again. Well, we've heard that from politicians.
Right.
Louisville Athletics reserves, which once sat at a comfortable $34 million once, have been drawn down to just $3.4 million total. And a Louisville athletic director, Josh Hired, summed up the impossible position every Power 4 athletic department now occupies with one of the truest sentences spoken in college sports this year. If you stop spending now, then you lose.
Lose athletically. This is the athletic department budget, correct?
Yep.
Not the entire university budget.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
If you stop spending now, you lose. Think about what Josh Hired is actually saying there. You cannot cut your way out of this problem, because the moment you stop spending on talent, your revenue collapses with it. Your TV money, your ticket sales, your donor base, all of it tied to winning. So you borrow, you spend, and the deficit grows. Craig, is there any exit ramp from that logic?
No. I mean, Louisville's games are sold out, and we'll go over other universities in here too, including UK. That's in this list. So this ain't just a Louisville thing. It's just the Louisville is $30 million. That's, and if I understand correctly from what I've read before, they had a 2-year, $25 million loan that they could draw down, and they blew through it quick, right?
It's correct. With PNC
and that's what's getting them to the $30 million in the hole.
Right.
Their athletic budget. And according to the 2025 Knight Commission National FBS, whatever that stands for, the football thing, Louisville is number 8 with a $13 million. This is 2025. So this, yeah, there you go. You got it right there. And on an athletic budget, this is unbelievable what the athletic budget is. $160 million. So now they outspent their budget of $912 million, and now they got to hit the students up for a $200 fee. So these NIL athletes can make millions, and the fans can pay more ticket prices and hot dog prices and beer prices. Where is this even remotely fair?
Well, it's not, and it's
the only ones winning is the athletes.
That's absolutely correct. Louisville's president and AD have been saying publicly for months that their situation is not the exception. It is now the rule. The data backs them up. Ohio State University, we have some guys who watch that are Ohio State fans, one of the biggest athletic brands in America with one of the largest football stadiums in the world, reported a $37.7 million loss in the same year it won a national championship.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's not even the worst part. Penn State is carrying more than $534 million in athletics-related debt. $500 million. The University of Michigan is projected...
Look at Oklahoma.
Yeah. Michigan has a $15 million deficit. Florida State is sitting on $437 million in athletics-related debt. These are not struggling mid-major programs. These are flagship universities at the top of the Power 4 food chain. The reason is structural. The House versus the NCAA settlement finalized in 2025 now requires schools to directly compensate athletes through revenue sharing to the tune of approximately $21 to $22 million per school per year at the Power 4 level. This is a mandatory new line item that did not exist 3 years ago. At the explosion in coaching salaries, Louisville's football coach salary nearly doubled to $6 million in 4 years.
$6 million per year.
And a massive buyout packages that ran $270 million conference-wide last season alone. And you have a business model that is breaking down in real time. 21 of Louisville's 23 sports currently operate at a loss, with individual deficits ranging from $4 to $6 million per program. Craig, Ohio State loses $37 million and wins the national title in the same year. Penn State's sitting at $500 million in debt. Louisville's reserves are essentially gone at this point. They're at 1/10 of what they were. These are not small schools struggling to keep the lights on. These are the most powerful athletic programs in the country. We haven't even gotten to Kentucky yet. At what point does someone in Washington or the NCAA, Ted Cruz, who's been lobbying for these changes,
hard? He's been going hard at it. Yeah.
Whatever the NCAA successor organization may be, when are they going to say it out loud? The entire financial model of college sports is broken, and it has to change.
Well, if you could see this list, I know it's hard to see it on screen, but it's 112 schools, and about 45 of them are showing a profit. And the whole profit go down to the best ones, University of Alabama.
I can't add that.
Yeah, they got a $267 million budget, and they spent less than that. Total revenue, $267 million. They're showing a $32,696 in the black.
Well, look at Florida. You and I talked about Florida.
Florida's the next one, right before Alabama. And they're $221 million total revenue, and they're $20,065,000 in the black. So after spending $250 million in 1 year, they only net $20 and $32 million respectively. And then I'm gonna go up here and find Kentucky. I know we're in the top 20, I think.
We're at number 13.
Okay, yeah, there we are.
Number 13.
$185 million, and we're $7.4 million in the hole.
Yeah.
After bringing in $185 million in revenue, we're still almost $7 million in the hole. How does that even happen? If that's a business, you know what happens at business? They file bankruptcy. Well, what are these universities going to do?
You remember years ago when the NCAA would come down hard on a program, and the big one you always wanted to avoid was lack of institutional control. Right. If this isn't a lack of institutional financial control at these schools, I don't know what would qualify for that.
Yeah, 47 universities on this list of 112 are in the red. And
of them, these are not small schools. These are major schools.
Have you ever heard of it's Rutgers. Okay, it's got that screen over. Rutgers is $47 million in the hole. Oklahoma's $49 million in the hole. How do you do that?
Well, and how do you do it when you're already $500 million in the hole like Penn State is? Like, how do you continue to go, $10 million in the hole when you're already struggling? It's something that I'll never understand. But because of this and the way that this has come out, it's now starting to leak out into Lexington publications and news outlets. You're going to hear it here first. We're going to bring it home to Big Blue Nation what this means, because Kentucky is not immune to any of this. Last year, UK's Board of Trustees Athletics Committee approved a plan to lend the athletics department, this is going to blow your mind, $141 million, $110 million for capital projects and facility upgrades, and an additional $31 million in operating funds to offset projected deficits across fiscal years 25 and 26. The Kentucky Athletic Department, which WDRB describes as a long model of financial self-sufficiency, would not have contemplated an operating deficit even a few years ago. Today, it's borrowing $31 million from the university just to cover operating shortfalls.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been Kentucky because of Kentucky, the SEC, bowl games and SEC money, Kentucky, and TV money, Kentucky football and basketball, with especially TV money, always covered the whole universities, and they were even taking money out of the athletic budget to fund professorships.
Right. Well,
and apparently that's no longer happening.
Apparently it's not. To adapt, UK became the first school in the country to formally spin off its athletic department into a nonprofit limited liability company, which we have talked about here before, Champions Blue LLC, a move enabled by Senate Bill 3, passed by the Kentucky lawmakers in 2025. The idea now is to operate more like a business, take on strategic debt, pursue new revenue streams, and build a governance structure that can survive the new era. UK President Eli Capelouto calls it a new strategic governance structure and operating model, unlike any in the country. And we've read that before.
I think that's pretty smart, actually, after hearing all this.
Kentucky's
taking the
basketball.
athletic department away from the university itself, that's a smart move.
Yeah, but then you have to think of it this way. Kentucky's basketball roster for 25-26 did cost in the area of $20 million, making it one of the most expensive rosters in college basketball. And the result was a second-round exit.
Yeah, I think they were number 5.
We are now in a historic 6-year drought without an Elite Eight appearance. The most expensive roster in the sport, we think we're number 5 at this point if you look at the actual numbers.
I was talking about last year. I think we ended up number 5.
Yeah, and 0 return on the investment in March. Craig, Kentucky borrowed $31 million to cover operating deficits, spun its entire athletic department into an LLC, and spent $22 million on a basketball roster, we understand, allegedly, because you'll never see those actual numbers.
Right.
They spent somewhere near $20 million. That lost in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Louisville is $30 million in the hole in borrowing to stay competitive. Both schools are right in the Commonwealth, and both are telling us the same thing. The old model is dead. Is Champions Blue the right answer, or is Kentucky just borrowing trouble along with borrowing money at this point?
Well, you look at it from a business point of view, it's non-sustaining. So they're making an attempt, which you got to give them credit for that. With the Champions thing, they're going to start trying to sell more and more stuff. I would say all the UK gear, the hats, all that kind of stuff. Let me go Dark Craig.
Dark Craig.
Like Dark Pope. All the UK stuff will cost more. You know, this hat was $18. It'll probably go to 30,
40,
maybe 40. Yeah, it might. And to fund this, because since they're separated off, I'm going to assume that the university no longer sends no money to the athletic department.
I 100% at this point,
because they spun it off, right?
They're borrowing.
What are we going to do if we run short on money for whatever reason? The TV deals go down. ESPN pays less. Are we going to no longer be competitive? Be able to not be the blue blood, but we're not going to be the bank of college basketball that we can pay the best players to come here.
I will give credit where credit is due. Eli Caputo and the UK board are explaining, what they've done and why they've done it. And now we're seeing the numbers on the back end of why it was so imperative. But I also want to give credit to Louisville. And you guys who know this show, we don't like to give a lot of credit to the University of Louisville. But at least they're being transparent at this point.
Right.
Louisville's leadership has been the most vocal in the country about what needs to happen structurally besides the University of Kentucky, which actually did it. In a white paper co-authored by President Jerry Bradley, AD Josh Hired, and board chair Larry Benz, the trio called for 3 things: congressional action, a governing body that can actually govern, and a hard and enforceable spending cap. On congressional action, they are specifically backing the SCORE Act and the SAFE Act, legislation that would establish uniform NIL rules nationally, allow colleges to collectively negotiate media rights, something currently blocked by antitrust laws, which will also be challenged in the courts. We are a decade away from this getting fixed.
Right.
On the spending cap, Louisville is proposing a hard ceiling on institutional spending. Again, it's going to be litigated, not on what athletes can earn through the NIL deals, but on what schools can spend on coaching salaries, staff, operations, and facilities, not limiting on the players. A survey by the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics found that nearly 70% of university presidents and athletic directors support national laws allowing limits on spending. And the Knight Commission's chief executive called Louisville's argument exactly correct, adding, "I think they're the first Power 4 university to go on the record with these concerns, besides Kentucky, who actually did it." And going on to say the counter argument from critics is blunt. This is a spending problem, not a revenue problem. Bloated coaching staffs, astronomical buyouts, and facility arms races are self-inflicted wounds. Mark Stoops with his nearly $40 million buyout. Both arguments contain truth. And without Congress acting, without a functional governing body replacing the lawsuit-paralyzed NCAA, the financial bleeding will continue and it will eventually reach programs that cannot borrow their way out of it. Craig, Louisville is calling for spending caps. Kentucky is restructured as an LLC. Ohio State is losing $37 million. Penn State, $500 million in debt.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and somewhere in the middle of all this is a 17-year-old kid from Serbia who's trying to decide where to play basketball. And the school that can promise him the most money wins. Craig, is college basketball and college football and college athletics in general, is it fixable, or have we already passed the point of no return and we're headed over the cliff at this point?
Well, everything's fixable. Any business can recover. It's the Wild West in college sports right now when they allowed name, image, and likeness stuff to be coming out, and these universities wanting to win so badly that they're spending millions of dollars on 17 and 18-year-olds that have never played a college dribble in a college practice. And yet they're signing them on potential. And, we saw that last year. We had a couple players go down that played just a few games, not their fault of their own. I don't hold those players at fault for signing a $4 million contract. It's the University of Kentucky, even taking the chance. Yeah. Like the NBA, if a trade goes to an NFL and the player does not pass a health exam, the deal's off. Now, I don't know if we did a health exam, but, might be true back in the day, but
they did in the last 2 years.
And then look at, the Kraft family. They're rich. There's no doubt they're rich as hell. But if you're paying millions of dollars, you're building practice facilities, you want some wins.
Yeah.
You're not doing this just out of the goodness of your heart. If you did, you'd build it at Bellarmine, or you'd build it at Kentucky State, or you'd build it at Eastern. But University of Kentucky is a winning program. And if Joe Kraft is wanting to spend tens of millions of his coal money on the University of Kentucky, he's going to want wins, or he just pull back.
Well, they're not able to provide $30 million to cover the deficit.
He could. He's rich.
Well, but there's a
it's not financially responsible.
No, there's a point. My take on this is what Louisville's leadership said publicly before the Board of Trustees, and they, what the board is saying, and I give them so much credit because they were going to get hammered today in all of the Louisville and national sports.
Yeah.
X going crazy with this, but they are saying something that the math doesn't work. The math, they're finally saying it out loud. We all knew it. We've all been saying it's unsustainable, but the math doesn't work. It has not worked for years, at least in the last 3. And the only reason it has stayed hidden is that schools have been borrowing, papering over deficits with one-time transfers and hoping the next media rights deal or the next coaching hire fixes everything. Louisville has to be commended. Again, you're never going to hear me say this for saying out loud what everyone else is whispering. This is broken. Kentucky, though, has to be commended because they're the first school to actually do it. And I think
make an effort.
Make an effort, do something. Whether it gets fixed depends entirely on whether Congress is willing to act and whether a university president across the country are willing to follow Louisville's lead and say so publicly. Until that happens, Craig, we're watching an arms race funded by student fees, university loans, and borrowed time, and we'll have
donor money.
No,
I just now looked up Arkansas, and they bring in $195 million, and they're showing a $7 million surplus. So, but they've got Tyson money, and they got Jerry Jones, owner of the Dallas Cowboys. Those are their two big benefactors. We got Joe Kraft, and Tyson. I don't know. Joe Kraft might be bigger than Tyson Foods. I don't know, but they're apparently spending their money a little bit better or not paying what we're paying to get these players.
Well, it can't be on the backs of just one person, and it certainly can't be on the backs of the students as well. I mean, we talked about this, an in-state student for a year at the University of Kentucky is now looking at over $50,000 when you add all the fees and the housing expenses and everything else. It's a couple $100,000 when you get out of there. When you add all of your housing and your meal plans and everything else, it is atrocious what it costs to go to these universities. And a lot of that is because of these, these building ideas and you can't go through Lexington without seeing 10 new buildings being built on campus.
Well, when my children went to Northern Kentucky University, they're 2 years apart in age. So they were there for 6 years. Not one time when I went up to NKU did I not see them building new buildings.
Yeah.
I said, no wonder it costs so much to go up here. They never stop building, but I guess if the students and the parents are willing to pay it or the banks are willing to loan the money, why not?
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for us tonight. Craig, you got anything to add before we get out of here?
Nope. Been an eventful day.
It sure has. What a
we had a plane show. I mean, we had a. Nah, I ain't got nothing. I ain't gonna talk about it. I'm news full now.
Yeah. Well, Craig, thank you as always for joining us through local, national, the heavy, and the important. This show works because of you, and I appreciate it. To everyone watching and listening, thank you for spending your Tuesday, late afternoon, early evening with us. If tonight's show gave you anything, something to think about, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't. About 75% of you have not subscribed, and share this with someone who needs to be above the noise. So until next time, please stay informed, stay sharp, stay above the noise. Good night, everybody. Have a great Tuesday night.